Rabbi Yohanan now escapes the city and gets to Aspasianus. And Aspasianus now is camping out with the army outside of Yerushalayim. And when Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai comes in front of Aspasianus, the Gemara tells us that he greets him the following: Shalma alach malka, Shalma alach malka. Twice he tells him, Shalom alechem, it's a greeting to the king. And Aspasianus tells him, for just this statement, you're obligated, hayab mita, you're obligated to die for two wrong things. Number one is, I'm not a king. And if you call me a king when I'm not really a king, it's an insult to the real king, and therefore that's called disrespecting the king, and that's punishable by death. And number two is, let's say I was the king. How come until now we're surrounding the city till now? How come you're the leader of the Jewish people, why don't you come out or send people to talk to us? So for that also you hayab mita. So Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai answers each one at a time. He tells him, when you said that you're not a king, it cannot be. You are a king. Whether you realize it now or you realize it later, you will become a king, because it looks like Yerushalayim will be given over in your hands. And based on Pesukim, Yerushalayim can only be given over in the hands of a king. Now, regarding the other question, how come I didn't come out to greet till now? He tells him, what could I do? There were Biryonim who wouldn't let us come out. We tried to convince them to come out to make peace, but they wouldn't let. So Aspasianus tells him, let me give you a mashal, Rabbi. If you have a barrel with honey and a snake around it and you want to get to the honey, what do? Don't you break the barrel now to get rid of the snake? And Rabbi Yohanan didn't know how to answer him. And the Gemara says, what do you mean? The answer is simple. No, you get rid of the snake. And I couldn't get rid of the snake. You don't break the barrel. The mashal was hinting that, the barrel is the city of Yerushalayim, and the snake are the Biryonim. If the snake is not allowing you to save the barrel, you get rid of the snake. But Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai didn't know how to answer that. And the Gemara says, Hashem didn't allow him to think of that answer, even though it's very simple, because the sins of the Jewish people exceeded the limit, and Hashem was going to bring destruction to the Yerushalayim, and he didn't want Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai to answer the right answers in order that the Gzerah should be completed. While they're talking the conversation, a messenger comes from Rome to Aspasianus and tells him, Aspasianus, stand up, for now you have become the new king. You're the new Caesar. The Caesar died over there, and everybody got together, the government got together, and they decided to appoint you as a new king. And Aspasianus, when he stood up, he was in the middle of tying his shoes. He had one shoe on, and he was so delighted by the news, he tried to put on his second shoe and wouldn't fit. Back then, a size 10 and a size 11 didn't exist. You had custom-made shoes, and it was exactly fit to his foot, and now it wouldn't fit to his foot, and he didn't understand. He tried to take off the other shoe, and it wouldn't even come off. So Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai calmed him down. He told him, he said, no, we have in our Torah, it says that when you hear good news, it makes the bones expand a little bit. He says, really? He says, yeah. And bad news makes it come back and makes it shrink. If you want the shoe to come off, then what you should do is get somebody that you don't like, let them walk in front of you, and it'll get you a little bit agitated and upset, and this will shrink your bones back to their size. And that's what he did, and that's exactly what happened. His bones shrunk back to size, and he realized that he's dealing over here with a very wise man. So he told him, you pretty much like prophesied that I'm going to become the king. And you're such a wise man, I'm going to grant you 3 wishes. Maybe this is where Aladdin got it from. Anyway, I'll grant you 3 wishes, and you tell me what you would like. So Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai requests 3 things. Number 1 is that you should save the city of Yavne. The city of Yavne was a city where all the Hachamim lived, kind of like the Bnei Brak of our days. He says, I want you to save the city of Yavne. Number 2, Rabban Gamliel was the Nasi, was a leader, or Lord Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai was now the leader, but Rabban Gamliel came from the lineage of David HaMelech, and eventually Mashiach will come from there. But so he told him, I want you to save the lineage of Rabban Gamliel. And finally, number 3, there was a great tzaddik, his name was Rab Tzadok. And Rab Tzadok, the Gemara says, was fasting for 40 years. Now, of course, he had to eat somewhere in between, but pretty much the tzaddik was fasting for 40 years, and therefore he got very, very sick, malnutrition and everything else. So he says, I want you to heal Rab Tzadok. And the Gemara right away questions the story. He says, come on, Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai, you had 3 wishes. Why didn't you ask that the city of Yerushalayim should be saved? You could have said it. You could have just saved the whole city. And the Gemara gives the same answer that we said before. Hashem had a decree to destroy Yerushalayim. And therefore, even the wisest of men couldn't think of this idea. Hashem didn't allow him to think of this suggestion, even though it's pretty simple. But the Gemara says, so what was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai thinking? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was thinking, you know what? If I ask him to save Yerushalayim, I might not even get it. Let me ask for something small. You know, they say a story that Napoleon, after conquering a few countries, went into the hospital where the soldiers from the other countries were lying and being treated. And he went with his secretary and he went over from soldier to soldier and he told them, ask of whatever you want, I, Napoleon, will give it to you. And he would go to the German soldier and the German soldier would say, free Germany. And he would go over to the other soldiers from other nationalities. Each one would say, free my nation, free my country, free mother, whatever it is. And finally he gets to the Jew. There was a soldier who was Jewish. He was lying down. And he's lying down next to all the other soldiers. And he comes to the Jew and he says, I'm Napoleon. I'm the king. I'm the conqueror. I rule everything. Ask whatever you want and I'll fulfill it for you. So the Jew says, yeah, I'd like maybe like a plate of kugel. I'm a little hungry. Make it hot and fresh. So right away, he turns to his second. Napoleon turns to his secretary. He tells him, get this man a kugel right away. Okay. So now the Jew gets his kugel and Napoleon leaves. So now all the soldiers turned to him and they said, fool, what are you doing? We all requested, we had a chance, we requested greater things. We requested that he should save the whole country. What'd you ask for? You asked for a kugel? So the Jew turns to them and he says, you know what the difference between me and you is? Did you notice when you asked for what you asked? What did Napoleon do? He told the secretary, record this soldier's wish in your book. You're not getting your request fulfilled. At least for me, I'm going to get my plate of kugel. I'm not going to be able to save a country, but at least let me get what I can get. Similarly, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Havdi, was thinking, let me grab what I can. Let me save at least the Talmidei Chachamim. Let me save the lineage of Mashiach, that at least we give a chance for Mashiach to come. And let me save Rav Tzadok, who has been fasting for so long. And then Aspasianus goes away, and the Gemara discusses there how Rav Tzadok was healed. And now the Gemara says that Titus Harasha was sent to destroy Yerushalayim. And the Gemara says Titus was a tremendous Rasha. He didn't just destroy. He destroyed in a very disgusting way. First of all, he walks into the Beit HaMikdash and he grabs a Sefer Torah, rips open the Sefer Torah and puts out the Yeriot, puts out the parchment. He takes the Zonah in Kodesh HaKodashim where the Aron was, and he does an Avirah with the Zonah right there on the Sefer Torah, just to insult the holiness of the place. And it's outrageous what a person could do. And then he took a sword and he ripped, there's a humongous parochet, a divider between Kodesh HaKodashim and the Kodesh, and he takes a sword and he rips this big parochet, and the Gemara says as he ripped it, blood came out. Hashem brought out blood on purpose to fool Titus, and Titus says, aha, I killed the God of Jews. He was hiding behind this parochet. I killed him and I destroyed him. And now, that's it. I've done my mission. And let's destroy this whole place. It says that he took the other parochet over there. There was two parochets. The Gemara tells, the Mishnah says, he took one of the parochet that was not ripped, and it was huge. And he took it and he put all the utensils of the Beit HaMikdash, all the silver, all the golden things, the vessels. He put them in this big parochet. And he carried it on his ship back to Rome, and he destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, and he went back to Rome with all of these vessels to show his nation of what he has accomplished, of what he's done. If you look till today, there's what they call the Arch of Titus. You could Google it, you could check it anywhere, and you could see there's the Arch of Titus, and there's over there a picture that shows soldiers carrying different things, like a parade. And one of the things that they're carrying is a menorah, and that's a menorah that they took from Yerushalayim. That Sha'ar Titus, what they call the gate of Titus, was where Titus walked in when he destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. And this is what the Gemara records over here. He is the one who was the Rasha. The Gemara calls him Rasha ben Rasha, the son of Isav Rasha, who destroyed, with his hands, he destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. But the Gemara asks, Hashem, you're so great. How could you allow such a thing to happen? So the Gemara explains that really there's a gzerah that had to happen, and this shows the greatness of God even more. I'll give you an example. If a person would come and insult any one of us, after a while we get very upset and we react. If we don't react, that shows our strength. It shows our inner strength that these words and these insults don't bother me. And if the person would smack us and hit us, if we're very, very strong, we wouldn't even feel it. But because we are weak, therefore we feel the need to answer back. We feel the need to attack the person back. Hashem is so great and so mighty, as the Gemara says, Mi ba'elim. Nobody is as powerful as God. He could see his Beit HaMikdash destroyed, and he could see all these things. He does not have the need to fight back. This doesn't mean that Hashem will not take the revenge out on those who destroyed Beit HaMikdash. Of course he's going to get that revenge. But he does have to react on the spot. When the time comes, when the Jews are worthy of being redeemed, Hashem will avenge the blood of his nation and the destruction of his temple. Now the Gemara continues that on the ship back to Rome, Titus started bragging of the greatness of Titus, of how he was able to destroy the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim and the God of the Jewish people. So Hashem brought a storm and started picking up the ship, and Hashem was about to drown Titus on the spot over there with all his things. His time came. So right away Titus answers. He says, looks like the God of the Jews is only powerful in water. He was only able to destroy Par'on Mitzrayim when he drowned them in the Yam Suf. Sisra, he was only able to drown with the river. Must be he has no other power except with water. So right away, there was a bat call that comes in and says, Rasha, you think my power is only in the water? You know what? I'll calm the ocean, and I'll show you that even the smallest of creatures that I created will be able to destroy you on its own. Wait till you get on dry land. If you want to, because Titus claimed, if he was really tough, let him fight me on dry land. So Hashem waits till Titus lands and parks docks by Rome. Titus gets out of the ship, and Hashem sends what seems to be a mosquito that goes into Titus's nose, and it travels up to his brain. And the Gemara says that this bug was eating away at his brain, was peckering at his brain for 7 years constantly. The only time that Titus got a relief was one time. It says he was walking, and there was a blacksmith that was knocking on metal, and as he was knocking, he realized that the noise in his head stopped. And when he realized that this is what helps this thing stop, he would hire every single day a blacksmith that would come and knock with metal on metal, with a hammer on metal, and this calmed the agitation they had. You can imagine the tremendous suffering they had for 7 years. He's hearing zzz, zzz, and things eating away in his mind. Yeah, a tremendous amount of suffering for all these years. However, the Gemara says that after 30 days, the bug that was inside of Titus' head got used to the noise and went back to his job of making noise. And now even with the blacksmith, it wouldn't work. And eventually, after these 7 years, Titus couldn't handle the pain, and he died. And right before he was dying, he made a last will and testament. And what was that? He says, I know that the God of the Jews is going to kill me afterwards. So therefore, I want you to take my body, to burn it, and to take the ashes and to scatter it over all the 7 seas of the world. So this way he won't be able to catch me. Titus was such a fool. He didn't know the power of God. He thought that he could escape the punishment of God. And he commanded that they should burn him to escape the punishment. But the Gemara says that Titus did not escape punishment. Titus' nephew was none other than Uncle Sagir. Uncle Sagir explains how he converted, and they tried to bring him back. But before converting to Judaism, Uncle was very sincere. He really wanted to know, what should I do? So he brought back to life the souls of a few people that deceased. Now his uncle, the brother of his mother, was Titus. He was a great man. He was a very respected man in Rome. So he wanted to know, he passed away. I'm sure his opinion counts very well. I'm sure he knows what's going on over there. He brought back the soul of Titus, and he asked him, who's important in the real world? You're already there in the real world. Who's important? So Titus tells him, you want to know who's really important? The Jewish people. He says, what's your opinion? What should I do regarding the Jewish people? He says, I'll tell you one thing. As far as the real world, the Jews are the most important. But as far as this world that we live in, the rule is like this. Whoever oppresses the Jews and bothers the Jews becomes the leader. That's the way it works. How to explain it? That's the way it works. That's the pasuk. That's what it says. So, out of curiosity, Unclus asks his uncle Titus, let me ask you, what's your punishment over there? What are they doing to you over there? So Titus says, exactly what I prescribe for myself, they do it over and over. Every single day, they take Titus, they judge him for his acts of destruction of Beit HaMikdash and killing of the Jewish people, and then they burn him alive, and he feels the same pain that he felt. And after they burn him, he turns into ashes. They scatter him over the ocean, and again the next day they bring back all the ashes back together. They form his spiritual body again, and again they burn him, this burn that he could feel spiritually. And that's the way the Gemara concludes this whole episode of the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. And the Gemara concludes with the following line, where it says, where did this all start from? From the story of Bar Kamsa. How he was embarrassed and he was kicked out of the party. And the Gemara says, look how far an embarrassment could go. Hashem was so sensitive to the Bar Kamsa's feelings that he was embarrassed, that the whole Beit HaMikdash was caused. Now, even though there was a gzerah to destroy Beit HaMikdash, and all the Jews deserved that Beit HaMikdash should be destroyed, but the story came out through Bar Kamsa to show, as the Mefarshim explain, that this was a sin that was prevalent amongst the Jewish people. It wasn't just Bar Kamsa. It was something that everybody could have been guilty of. And being that it happened this way through Bar Kamsa, we get to learn of what was a mistake. As the Gemara in Yuma explains, that the sin in the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash Hasheni was sinat hinam. So people hated each other. They couldn't find ways that they could put their differences aside and they couldn't get along. And Bar Kamsa's story was highlighted to show of how severe the sin could be and what its consequences are.